So I wasn't really sure where Ishida would take this week's chapter. Obviously we have the Kaneki and Furuta situation just completely blown out of proportion last week, and then this week, today's chapter, it's gone a step above, that's for sure. The first thing I want to touch on is Ishida's portrayal of Furuta in this chapter, right? Because there is emotion just trickling through very slightly throughout the entirety of the chapter that makes Furuta feel like a real character. It's nice to see Ishida, hopefully, to what I think, putting a bit more emphasis on Furuta's morality, why he is doing the things he is doing, and basically making him a more believable character, a more relatable character, if you will. This is what I loved throughout the chapter, because it wasn't all too much, but it was enough to kind of spark that interest for what seems to be potentially the upcoming chapters. The biggest question right now is the pacing of this entire thing, because it goes through the story of Tokyo Ghoul, and every single fight you ever get, it doesn't really last all too long. It's very short-lived. Kaneki versus Furuta has been a fight that people have been waiting for a very long time, and this chapter has, in a fighting aspect, has given people what they wanted, right? The panel work in this chapter alone is phenomenal. The abilities in this chapter alone is phenomenal, and just Furuta's ferociousness, but also like in a flashback monologue, his desperation truly spills out into this chapter, and you can almost feel the emotion that Furuta is, struggling with. You can feel kind of what he's going through. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Ishida is going to go back to, I guess, Furuta's background and kind of wrap him into the story as a character that has been broken one too many times, a character that wishes he could have all of these things but ultimately has not. Basically, a character that has been plagued or cursed because of his bloodline. Like I said, it's something that is slowly trickled throughout this chapter, and I'm hoping that Ishida blows it up and brings it to the spotlight. Make Furuta a believable character, breathe some life into his character. He's got all this mystery behind him, but the fact that we're slowly getting a little bit more for him, it makes me believe that this fight may evidently continue. The desperation of this fight is completely over the top, even though the finale, the final panel of this chapter concludes with Furuta getting slashed in half. I don't think Furuta is down for the count just yet. One thing that makes me nervous, however, is actually the KAKUJA, because it looked fucking insane, I'll give you that much, but as of now, there's no real, I guess, backbone for it. Furuta is a fickle character. He has a lot of grounding in the story, but when it comes to why he's so evidently powerful, we still have yet to find out why, which is kind of the biggest stuff that I'm concerned with when it comes to Furuta's character, and how quickly Furuta could evidently leave the story, because if this is it, right, if this is the finale of the final fight between Kaneki and Furuta, that Furuta is truly done for, I'm going to be severely disappointed. There is so much that Ishida can do trying to breathe some relatable life into Furuta as a character, which I believe he is trying to do just with this chapter alone, putting a lot more emotion behind him, stuff that we haven't seen before when it comes to Furuta and how he handles situations, because he's either so straight-laced or extremely goofy. So seeing this side of him in this chapter and slowly trickling in the flashbacks as well helps kind of build a picture for what his character could potentially be. It's extremely early to, I guess, have an ending point for his character, but the clarification is 100% needed. I cannot express how important that stuff is. We need this clarification for Furuta as a character. We need his backstory, we need his motivation, his morality, his journey. And it seems like with the title of the next chapter, we should be getting it piece by piece. I was kind of hoping that this chapter would solely be a flashback, but I guess kind of with how everything's going at the moment, it suits kind of Ishida's style of pushing everything extremely quickly. For those of you who have not realized, Ishida is 100% rushing through the story. This fight in itself is prevalent of being rushed, right? It's paced incredibly quickly, as like this stuff is kind of, I guess, subjectively being forced down your throat, but at the same time, it's kind of been there, but it hasn't been played upon, so it's very weird. I'm interested to see how people interpret this chapter in terms of Furuta's character and like the flashback mixed with these emotions, mixed with the overall power scaling of his KAKUJA, then obviously versing Kaneki, and I felt like there could have been a lot more emphasis on his emotion, maybe a couple more flashbacks. But the one panel that I actually really enjoyed was the one where Furuta knew he fucked up, basically seeing, I don't want to say his life flash before his eyes, but a life that he could have had kind of flash before his eyes, and that was in a depiction of a lover and a child, or two children I should say, something that he evidently couldn't have but most likely wants. And like I've been saying throughout this video, it's breathing a lot more life into his character. How much Ishida puts into that, I don't know, but I'm hoping it's a lot. It's weird because like this stuff could have been trickled through the story a little bit better instead of just dumping all of it on us now. I do appreciate that Furuta's getting a spotlight in terms of his morality and his mentality and how he is handling things, as well as his backstory, how it stems from his past, how it stems from his family. Ishida needs a play on this. I cannot express how important this information for Furuta is to make his character a good one. At the moment, it's very fickle, but it's slowly getting a bit of beef to it, slowly getting a bit of backbone, and it somewhat correlates with the, ending of the story, if you will. It's unfortunate that there's pacing issues, but I'm hoping Ishida can handle it. I'm hoping he's got stuff up his sleeve, and it kind of seems like he does. Regarding everything else, because this chapter was basically a sole focus on Furuta and his emotions, as well as how he perceives everything, as well as how he perceived Kaneki, like I thought was going to happen, the power scaling has completely gone through the roof. We have two characters that are incredibly beefy at the moment. I don't know what you'd want to call Kaneki. Is he a half Kaguja or a full Kaguja? I don't know. I wouldn't say a full Kaguja. You know what? I wouldn't even say a half Kaguja. I think it'd just be like a different form in itself, but it looks pretty cool. I'll give you that much. He's got all these like symbolic swords and wings, and he's got everything going for him at this point, and you can thank Dragon for that. Furuta, on the other hand, has this half Kaguja, full Kaguja that resembles his character actually quite beautifully to an extent, and I may be looking into it a little bit too much, but when you see his Kaguja for the first time, as you know, Kagujas usually resemble the mental state of said character. Half Kaguja, full Kaguja, they both usually do. Kagujas has specific traits to each individual person, so normally when you see a Kaguja for, different characters, they're completely different. A good example is Takizawa, kind of a knight in shining armor to an extent. Almond's half Kaguja was completely blitzo, it was crazy, it was unorthodox, and then you get his full Kaguja, which is completely traitless, which, I obviously still believe is, artificially enhanced. Furuta's, to an extent, is obscured. In my opinion, it is the definition of his obscured morality and mentality, the way he thinks about things, and it's fully blacked out, but it has this spiraled, starry face. I don't know, what you'd want to call it. It doesn't evidently share a lot of traits. It doesn't have massive wings on the back of it. It's very slim. It's simple in design, but it's very obscure. It seems like it's very mentally driven, if you will. I'm hoping that there's a little bit more clarification on it, if it develops a little bit more, I guess the waiver in his state of health, but, obviously that has yet to be seen. You get to see that. You get Kaneki and Furuta, going toe to toe with one another, and then ultimately Furuta slips up, has this, vision of what he potentially could have had, which I don't think is like a flashback or anything. If people are going to think that like, oh, there could be a flashback. I don't think it is. It'd be very pointless to me if they, brought up a past that he had with the family to what he is now. It completely reverses and flips his character. It's backwards to an extent. So I think it's a future that he wanted but ultimately couldn't have. Not necessarily something that he did already have but was ultimately cut short. There's a very big difference, even though I explained it extremely poorly, which I apologize for. Furuta gets demolished out of this Kaguja. I guess it was a decent back and forth fight, but like I said, this was more of a pinnacle moment for Furuta, and I believe next week's chapter will be as well. But he gets slashed in half and what seems to be pulled out of that Kaguja form. So the big question I have, right, because that basically clears the whole chapter, is where exactly do we go from here? Kaneki's in a pretty unstoppable form at this point. Do we add Rize into the mix now? Does Furuta go into another form? Does he completely lose control, which would definitely be a very interesting thing to see. To some extent, he was on the brink of insanity. I think Ishida teetered around it quite well, but to an extent, it felt kind of overshadowed with everything that was going on. Is there more to this fight? I pray to God there is. I'm hoping there's another form or, another situation that comes into play, whether it be Rize in general, to, I guess, pick Furuta back up on his feet or, whatever. If there isn't, then I think the only redeemable point for this fight, other than like the cool looking abilities, would be if Ishida plays on a very heavy dialogue based flashback for Furuta, giving him a lot more of a character to work with. Like I said before, this clarification is needed. This is the bread and butter of said character, and if we realistically don't get it, this final fight is going to seem extremely fickle. I know a lot of people are not going to enjoy this chapter just because it's not the clarification that we needed, because we needed this kind of prior to the fight, but it seems like Ishida is kind of teasing it in bit by bit, and I don't know, hopefully he just dumps it in the next chapter at this point. So that's basically it. It was a pretty simple chapter to an extent. There wasn't a lot going on. The scale of everything has gone through the roof, but the concerns I have lies with Furuta. Kaneki's just a powerhouse at this point, and Furuta needs a little bit more of a backbone in my opinion, and then hopefully Ishida, you know, starts pushing it out a little bit more, which it kind of seems like he was slowly teetering around in this chapter. So I guess we'll see. With that being said, let me know what you guys thought of the chapter. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think of Furuta? How do you think Ishida's going to handle him in the upcoming chapters? So with that being said, I'm actually going to end the video off here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.